the greatest thing to me that I love is hearing the way that you honor the artist that you have on.
Stories make the world go round. They capture our minds, pull at our hearts, and inspire change, growth, and development.
It's just your genuine human appreciation on a deep, like, soul level for what artists do. Your podcast is really dope.
I'm your host, Cello, and welcome to Bedroom Beethovens, the podcast where we discover some of the preeminent music producers and entertainers of our time, and I turn them into storytellers.
What's up? This is J-Rock, and I'm right here. I'm chilling on the Bedroom Beethovens podcast. That's what it is. Let's go.
Welcome, people of Earth, to episode 179 of the podcast.
Don't judge a book by its cover if you don't even read. There's no shame in saying that you're not up to speed. No, you're just scared.
My guest this week is...
My name is Amir Muhammad. I go by Oddisee. I'm a hip-hop producer, MC from the DMV area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And my most notable collaborations have been with myself. I'm a self-made producer, MC. I think I've spent more time working on my own records than any collaborations.
To the point, if I didn't know the answer, I would make it up like the meaning of a canvas. I never shoot a winner leg with a guess, and I go off on a rant if you say I ain't correct. But that got real old real fast. I think I had a fear about being on the outside, or the end while everybody out. I just want to be the first yelling out, it's about time. I don't have a clue what I'm doing most times when I wake up in the morning. Being fake in the mix, nah, I just rather be real not knowing.
Don't judge a book by its cover if you don't even read. There's no shame in saying that you're not up to speed. No, you're just scared. Yeah, you're just scared.
Yup.
Oddisee long ago cemented himself as a thought leader among his music peers with an observational rhyming style coupled with production that transcended the traditional hip-hop audio norms. We chat about everything under the sun leading up to his new album, but before we get to that, I want to thank you for listening, and if it's your first time here, consider subscribing to your favorite podcast platform and leaving a 5-star review. BedroomBeethovens.com is the website where you can check out stuff, past episodes, buy merch, and see clips on YouTube. Last but not least, patreon.com/BedroomBeethovens. It's a nice little spot where I can continue to keep this podcast ad-free, but in return, build a community. How it works is you can give a few bucks a month to me, like a digital tip jar, and in return, you get some perks. You know, give a little, get a little. It's a nice little exchange of services and admiration, but above all else, if you dig the show, tell a friend. Those are the kind of gestures that move mountains. Without further ado, episode 179 with the man, the myth, the legend, PG County's own Oddisee. You know, you've produced, you've wrote, recorded, mixed, designed, released, rehearsed, and toured, and now it's time, as you put it, to sell and smile. So it's my responsibility right now to. We're not going to make that last part tedious. I'm gonna do my best.
All good, man.
And this is a true story. My first vinyl was Rock Creek Park, and when Kev Brown came on a few years ago, I had to ask him about it. So I told Kev Brown when he was on, and I told him, to a guy like me in Texas, it was like Narnia, you know. So he told me in PG County that, you know, the great thing about PG County is you can go to the hood and there's always going to be something green there. But Rock Creek Park is everything you dreamed it was. It's so close to home that most people take it for granted. It's walking distance and goes into DC, but because it's so big and readily available that people don't really appreciate it. He says it's kind of like a Silver Spring mentality.
I spent my earlier years in Montgomery County in Silver Spring. When I finished from school, I was able to ride my bike into the park. And after that, you know, my family moved to Prince George's County. That's where I met Kev. I was very, very far away from Rock Creek Park. It's not accessible when you live in PG County. It was later on in my life that after I finished high school, I moved back into DC and I lived in Petworth, which is an area in Northwest DC near Rock Creek Park, that I started going back to the park more. And I kind of had this realization. That's where I made the album as well. That, I spent my earlier year there riding my bike, playing in the woods. We'd go on field trips to the zoo. The zoo is also in Rock Creek Park. And then as an adult, I went on dates there, barbecues, cookouts, bike riding, etc. So I spent a lot of time in that park at different stages in my life and realized how important it was to me.
And kind of the irony is, you spent growing up, you spent summers in Sudan originally because the DMV, PG County and all that, it was rough back in the day. But nowadays, DC is probably a safer place than Sudan. So it's kind of flipped in modern times.
I wouldn't go that far, but yes, it's safer. It's definitely safer. I think all across America we're experiencing a wave of crime due to lack of jobs and opportunities and inflation that is reminiscent of the 90s, especially in DC and New York, where we're seeing a resurgence of a lot of those things. But for a brief time, there was a glimpse of prosperity, and a lot of crime was definitely on the decline. I'd say the reverse for Sudan. It seems to just be getting worse.
But when you were sent there as a kid, is that something that you looked forward to? Like, if we go back to simpler times, what was it like when you visited the capital city?
I mean, it was going back to Sudan was definitely something I look forward to. And the thing about it was, even when I went as a child, it was dangerous in Sudan. But the danger came from a military regime and secret police, right? So if you weren't in the business on, I guess, resisting the government, acting out in protests, etc., you were relatively left alone, whereas crime was a bit more indiscriminate in the States. So it was the influence of, if I stayed home during the summer, being around a peer group that would influence me and change the course of my life versus going back to a place that was just poorer, but socially was safer. So Sudan was always far more poorer, and life, I guess, had less of a value because it was so fragile. But there was no peer group that would encourage me to lean into anything that would bring me harm throughout the rest of my life. And that's what my father was trying to keep me away from.
I mean, even today, there's no online shopping, no Amazon, no Spotify, no Uber. So it forces you to be more connected, less distractions.
My summers were very humbling, and I came back to the States at the end of August, beginning of September, with a different perspective on what I valued. And that was something that has been a long lasting gift in my life. A roof over my head is a roof over my head. It doesn't matter the size of the house that I'm in. And that's the thing that I've never really lost sight of, is if I'm shielded from the elements, then I'm happy. And that's a metaphor that I use even in the practices of my music, where if I'm able to make a living from my music, I'm happy without worrying about being more famous, I guess.
But I read that you're half Sudanese, and when your father remarried and moved back to Sudan, it became a full Sudanese household. Like your stepmother is from Sudan as well. And I know you grew up and you had like conflicting religious debates between your two parents' beliefs. But was there a push and pull on growing up and your dad wanting you to be more in tune with your Sudanese side growing up? Like, was the African American side neglected, or was there an emphasis on both sides of the culture?
No conflict in that. I saw my mother's Black American. She's from DC, and I saw my mother on weekends. I was with my dad Monday through Friday for school because he lived in a better area for school, and I was in Sudan in the summers. And I was very much enriched by both sides of my ethnicities. Sure, there were debates, and I find myself at the crossroads, constantly giving explanations to either side about stereotypes and general beliefs that were just misunderstood. And I kind of appreciated that position on being able to explain those things. My father remarried, but we lived in America the entire time. He didn't move back to the Sudan until I was in my 20s. Also, I grew up in a predominantly Black area, pretty much like 90% Black, and the other 10% was probably Hispanic. Or I'll say this: there was conflict, there was no neglect. There wasn't one side of my family that was trying to encourage me to be like one or the other. In fact, my mother's side of the family always saw me as Sudanese, and my Sudanese side of the family always saw me as Black American. And I found solace in being both. I was always very comfortable in my own identity, even though others around me weren't.
The moniker Oddisee, though, they understand the gravity of what you do. Like when you make money and you send it back to Sudan to your family, do they understand the reach that you possess with the people that you inspire around the world? Like, do they understand Oddisee, the artist?
To an extent, I think I don't make music that either side of my family would listen to if I wasn't related to them, and that's from my mother's side or my father's side. I don't make top 40 music. I don't make street music. I don't make mainstream music. I don't make pop music. So I don't think either side of my family would have listened to me independently if they weren't related to me.
You remember when I would message you and you reply, but I feel like I wasn't getting through. Was said to prove I was the better dude. You had a situation and I was patient on way to make a move. As was I single, afraid to lose you. I played the fool, though she was made for me, I was made for you. That's the basic truth. You told me up front, but me I told you later. Discovered it on your own, now you think I'm some sort of player. But I was just delaying the news, and I would use your strength to break what was already broke, confused. But girl, you made it clear to me, acting out of a fear to see. You never hot, did me bruise, had to confess and I proved. I made it loose as I cut a tie, drowning my sea of lies. Pray I'm hung out to dry, rest assured. Shut the door, met you out front of your store. And I meant it when I said 2 way more than more. I meant it when I said it.
I think either side of my family didn't understand what I did for a living until the invention of Facebook. And they saw fans interacting with me, and they were able to see pictures of me going on tour, etc. It was after that time that they said, okay, I don't know his music, but other people do. And he seems to be doing well. It was later after that I started to step in and assume a position on helping, as not only me, but everyone in my family contributes to anyone who's in need.
So your father, he's an entrepreneur. So when you first sat him down and told him the plan, I guess he couldn't really understand the vision at first, but he gave you his support.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. He didn't understand it, but I made a deal with him and I spoke a language of business. And that's something I'm forever thankful to my dad, because he made me approach music from a very practical perspective and standpoint, that I wasn't able to run away romantically with ideas that would later be, hard to achieve. So I always measured my expectations. I always wanted to grow gradually. I always wanted to invest a little in myself and get a return on it. Things that I learned from watching him conduct business in the States. So I've always approached music from that perspective. So I'm very thankful for that. It might be one of the biggest assets I have as far as maintaining a career in music, was being very realistic about it and logical and less idealistic, I guess.
And if your kids grow up and at 21 they sit you down and have the same conversation with you, it'll probably go about the same way, right? As long as they have a plan and they're smart about it.
Oh yeah, whatever it is that they want to do, as long as they have a plan and they're smart about it and they can present it to me with goals and objectives, absolutely, whatever it is they want to do, I'll support it.
Yeah, I recently got turned on to I think he's like 18. And he's from PG County. His name is Redvale. Yeah, you caught wind of him?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. He's
He's from Largo. I'm from the same area. Yeah.
I bring him up because in a few weeks you're going to be celebrating your 38th birthday. So when I tell the people right now that you are on DJ Jazzy Jeff's debut studio album, I want that to set in, because that was 20 years ago. And in fact, Jazzy Jeff was the age you are now when he put that out. So imagine having a 17 or an 18-year-old impress you so much that he lands on To What End. It's almost a Herculean effort.
No, sorry. Did you say Redville was on my album? Did I misunderstand that?
No, I'm saying he's at the age now that you were when you were on Jazzy Jeff's debut album. Yeah. It's like, to be at that age and impress somebody twice your age to be on an album, I think that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, man. I never get used to that. I'm forever thankful for that opportunity, because it was Jeff that validated my efforts in the eyes of my dad, So I'm forever thankful for that.
Yeah, we've come a long way, man. And I read during the pandemic that you moved your studio to the basement of your house. Is there anything in your...
I just want to clarify. I just took a temporary setup to my house because we were all at home, and I didn't want to leave the family. But I still have my studio a few blocks away from my house, and I've very much since moved everything back in. I just took my small Genelec speakers, some headphones, and an interface so that I wouldn't have to leave the house for a bit. But I still have my studio. I'm in my studio right now.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny. I thought your studio was in your house, and it's not.
no, 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 no. I haven't worked in the same place I lived since
Oh,
2017.
okay.
But during the pandemic, during the pandemic, I took some small equipment to my house because everyone was home and no one was able to go anywhere, and I just wanted to show solidarity with the family instead of being like, "All right, I'm out. You guys take care." So I stayed home with the wife and kid. It's my second wasn't born yet during that time. But no, I have a studio. I have a studio. I've had a studio independently from where I live since 2017.
So
Yeah.
if I'm reading is correct, you said that your wife kind of helped you creatively with this album.
My wife helped me by giving me space to create and really taking the responsibility of the kids when they were home. So I was still able to have the time to work, and that time is so valuable. Having a clear head going into the studio makes a world of a difference for me. You know, when I'm bogged down by other things, it's kind of hard for me to be creative. So she really supported me and allowed me to have like a clear space to create. But this particular record, To What End, it was produced in my studio. I didn't produce it at home in the basement. I don't know if that.
Oh, yeah. So it was more indirect
Yeah,
inspiration
yeah,
than
yeah,
direct. She gave you
yeah,
the
yeah.
space to create.
Exactly,
I
exactly.
got you,
Yeah,
man. I
yeah,
got you
yeah,
because
yeah.
I read that you said that you were going through some things and you were tripping, and they kind of helped you get some clarity on the situation, and I guess giving you the space allowed you to kind of find yourself and then find your sound.
Exactly, exactly. She and I had a lot of conversations when I would come home about, I'm like, I just don't have it, and I'm not in a space to be creative. And we came. I just had a lot on my mind. I was bogged down, and she really stepped up and allowed me to free my bandwidth up to focus on music.
So can I ask how that internal process goes with you to where the final step is you coming to the realization that wait, I am one of the best producers MCs in the game. What am I doing?
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, it was kind of a snowball effect, kind of like a domino effect of my first was born in 2017. I wanted to take a break after she was born. So I wasn't as aggressively in the studio as I would normally be because I just wanted to be present for my family and my firstborn. Then I went on tour for a very long time after my album, The Iceberg. And then I came home to a pandemic for the first time in over 10 years, I had a really, really long time without immediately working on a project and releasing it. And then having that in-person experience with fans and an audience to realize what they appreciated, what they didn't, what worked, what didn't, taking that information back and putting it into the next project. So I basically just fell out of a rhythm. And as the longer I stayed out of that rhythm, the harder it was to get back into it. And then it left a lot of room to for self doubt to come in, for over analysis to trickle in, and it was almost debilitating.
But I love that. I love because when I had on like Diamond D, and I say, "Oh, you're one of the best to ever do it," and he goes, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." Like they stay humble. So I finally get a guy on my podcast that was like, "You know what? I am one of the best at what I do," and I can't tell you how much I love that because whenever people say statements like that, we shun them because we're hardwired when we hear statements like that as arrogance and not confidence. In a genre that reduces itself to beats and rhymes, you don't let that limit yourself. You're now as a hip hop artist.
No, 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 no. I mean, I'm an independent artist who is still relatively unknown, but I've managed to make a living off of my creativity and off of my art and my work. That makes me great. If no one else believes it, it really doesn't matter. I've achieved my own goals and expectations and my own ideas of greatness. And I think that's what I mean when I say that I'm one of the greatest, because my expectations are based on what I like and what I strive to be, and I wanted to be a great MC producer. I wanted to like my music just as much as I liked Jay Dilla or Q-Tip, and I do. So I've reached my own goal, for a while now.
And this work ethic goes as far back as the Red Bull Academy days. Like it was like a musical MTV Real World where you take 20, 30 participants and maybe 28 or 29 of those are going to arrive at the time you're supposed to arrive. And then there's one guy who's going to sleep there so he can use the studio a few hours early. That's the outlier. That's the guy who's serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everybody takes different avenues and roads to achieve whatever it is that they're looking for. Flying Lotus was in that same class with me. He wasn't sleeping in the studio, but as a metric of success, he's far more successful than me. So it wasn't necessarily because I slept in the studio that I'm at where I'm at, but it was what I needed to do to get here.
Well, in an alternate universe, you have a track on Little Brother's The Get Back album that had, work from Lil Wayne and mainstream people, but in this timeline, your song didn't make the deadline in time. What happens in instances like that?
Oh, I'm trying to remember the track that you're talking about. I mean, I've had so many records that I've been asked to be on. I was asked to be on what's the record Kanye came out with? Graduation. I was asked to be on Graduation to produce. I was asked to submit tracks to the Compton soundtrack. I was asked to submit tracks to Good Kid, Mad City. Most of the times, it was just a unfortunate circumstance of whenever I was asked to produce something for a bigger artist, I was always on tour and I had no time to do it. That was pretty much it. Nothing else. I was like, oh man, I would love to do this, but I'm not going to be home for another 6 weeks. And that's it. It was really, really unfortunate.
But your happiness equation of music plus wealth minus celebrity equals you. Do you think subconsciously maybe you missed those deadlines because you knew those projects would boost your celebritism and shattered that equation?
Fuck no. I was literally gone and I couldn't produce the shit. Nah. Nah. Fuck no. Like, nah, that's some sick shit. No. No. I have a therapist, but it's not for that reason.
So the beat that was supposed to go on Graduation, did you ever use it like on a personal project or sold it? Do you know what happens to those kind of things?
No, it wasn't a beat that was supposed to go on Graduation. It was what was his name? Who used to Plain Pat. Plain Pat was an A&R for Kanye. Pat was a big fan of my music, and Pat would hit me up for production for the record, and I just wasn't available. Literally, that's it. I was supposed to submit tracks for it, and I just didn't.
I mean, and then Dr. Dre and then Kendrick. Like, I guess these people, these A&Rs, just have their ears to the streets, and you just get on their radar. Maybe like the strategy of giving bigger artists beats for free, and then the word of mouth trickles down, and then you sell a beat to a lesser known artist based off the recognition and placement of a bigger artist. Maybe that pays off.
I'm sure that does. I've never had the time afforded to focus on shopping production to other artists. That's never really been my business model. My business model was to write, record a record in its entirety, release it, tour it, and license it, and reap the benefits of full ownership. And I found that more lucrative, and when looking at implicit and explicit costs, more valuable for me. If I had the extra time to make a surplus of the people to shop, I would. But that's also the other thing is when I work on a record, I don't produce a plethora of music. I work per record, so I never have any music left over. So that's one. A lot of people assume producers have a lot of beats. I don't. I usually have maybe one or two left over from a record when it's finished, but those one or two didn't make the record for a reason, so I wouldn't probably submit them to anyone else. So that's usually just what it is I never really have extra production laying around. The second issue is my personality type. To shop music, you have to be a bit more social. You need to meet people. You need to go out. You need to network. I'm terrible at doing those things. I'm very much turned off by a lot of like industry events, sitting on the metaphorical black leather couch in the studio. I like to work alone. So I don't really even have the personality type to be social to really shop beats. And I was very honest with myself from early on in my career.
So if you were in a studio with like Kanye, Pharrell, and all their entourages, that would probably just give you extreme anxiety. You probably wouldn't even be able to work as well as you could if you were alone.
Uh, it's not anxiety. It would give me just a headache. I don't suffer from anxiety, but I don't know any of these people, so I wouldn't assume that it would be this way. But from the times that I have been in environments like that, the yes men, too many cooks in the kitchen, the focus on the music becoming a product and that being one of the main motivations to create, it just doesn't really gel with me. Basically, I just don't care about what people care about. So it's hard for me to be in a room with people who give a shit about things that I don't.
And why is Outer Note label like a better platform and fit for you at this stage in your career? A lot of people are going to, you're synonymous with Mellow Music Group.
Ownership. I'll make more money. I'll be able to release records when I want to, not when I have to. And I'll own more, which will allow me to have to sell less to make the same amount of income.
So there was maybe some demand from Mellow Music Group, like, hey, we would really like it if you release an album every 2 years, and even if that doesn't fit in your
No, there was no pressure from Mellow Music Group whatsoever. Very, very amazing record label that puts the artist first, very, very understanding about the creative process and how sometimes it doesn't work on a clock like anything else. There was no issues there. It was just a logical step. If you are an employee and you gain years of experience by being employed by someone, and then you get to the point where you can open up your own business, why would you stay an employee? No one would do that. If they did, I wouldn't understand that. For me, logically, as a businessman, it doesn't just doesn't make sense. So for me, it was just the next logical thing to do was to take the years of experience that I had at the inner workings of a label, how distribution and marketing works, how much you have to put into the budget of a record. And when I had come to the point where that amount that we would have to put into a record, I could put in myself, the distribution that it would take to release a record, I could get myself. Why would I give up ownership to something that I can do, especially as my family was growing, and I want to make sure that my children are looked after. I want to work smarter and not harder, logically.
it makes total sense from my POV. I think I bring it up because Apollo Brown told me that he's probably never leaving. Like he likes the position he's in, and what Mellow Music Group did for him at a time in his life. I guess he's loyalty to that brand. But you, in the entrepreneurial spirit, I get what you're saying, 100%.
Yeah. There's no one way to do anything, and people have to be very honest with themselves. Just because you have the opportunity to do something, it doesn't mean that you necessarily can, or it doesn't even mean that um, you have the ability to do those things. There are some people who need to be pure artists and not be concerned with the business side of music, right? And that's amazing when you have that ability to be objective about yourself and know, I don't want to be a record label and have to take meetings about pressing and distribution and manufacturing and marketing meetings. And I don't want to have to do all of those things. I want to be in a space where I just create music and I'm willing to give a percentage of that revenue to someone who's going to do a good job on making sure that record is successful. That's a great thing. A lot of people should do that. So many people kind of go into positions of quote unquote becoming their own boss because they think that they're supposed to. And then they end up not being a good boss, but being a better musician. You can see parallels with that in sports. You may be a great player, but you might not be a good coach or a good team owner. Those don't automatically mean the same thing. For me, I was fortunate enough to come from a background and have a career where every step of the way I was a part of. So when it came time to doing all of these things independently, it didn't seem like a task that was over my head or too much for me to handle.
And yeah, because I know you've created projects on your own pace because you're independent, and I know you've created EPs. But this To What End album is the first like long play record since like 2017. Should people expect your output to slow down a bit and have more time in between releases?
No. If anything, it'll increase. You know, I want to get the most out of my current situation as possible. So again, logically, my output would increase, not decrease. You know, now I have a higher ownership in the records. It means that I have to sell less records to make the same amount that I would in previous years, right? So if I make just as many records as I did in previous years, even if they're selling half the amount, I'll still make more than I ever have. So the incentive to make more music is still there.
And then also your future releases, they may or may not have the doubt, overthinking, procrastination, obsessiveness that came with this album, because you're at a more rapid pace, and there's not a global pandemic to kind of break things up. So
Yeah, that's the thing I'm excited about the most is that I'm like freely creating again. I'm happily creating again without any worry that it's not as good as I think it is. I'm out of my own head. I'm out of my own way now. The pandemic was good for many things. One of those things was for the first time in my life, with my career, I have a plethora of production because I was constantly making tracks, seeing what stuck. So I can release probably 3-4 more records based off of what I've already produced without having to make another beat. So I think I'll be releasing a lot more music in the years to come.
that's amazing. And but focusing on To What End, I just want to give you the floor, Oddisee, to tell people anything they should know about the album.
Sure. This album is about focusing on the reasons for why we do what we do and how far we're willing to go for those reasons. And each individual track comes from a different angle of asking the why, answering it, and how far we're willing to go for it. And the reasons why we love who we love, or why we love what we do, or having anger or resentment or trust or a lack of trust, etc. Each record on this album talks about those points. And on this record, I give more of my own opinion versus just asking questions like I did on previous records.
I love it, man. I'm excited. I'm actually going to pre-order the vinyl because I have all your stuff on vinyl. I even have some of the, when Mellow Music Group went back and did the audio file stuff and released your early stuff, I have all that too, man. So I'm just going to add it to my collection. And this,
Oh, bless, man. I appreciate it.
I'm a huge fan, man. This conversation was a personal bucket list thing for me in my life. So, I want to let you know how much I appreciate your time. And in a few days, I want to wish you a successful album rollout. I know you got a birthday coming up, and for the rest of the year, man, I just want to wish you peace, love, and prosperity.
Thank you, man. Likewise. Same to you.